My coworker following me home after work saved me from something I never saw coming. I was unlocking my car in the dimly lit parking garage when I heard footsteps behind me getting closer. My heart jumped into my throat as I spun around, keys clutched between my fingers like a weapon. It was Vanessa from accounting, standing there in her business casual outfit with her purse hanging off one shoulder. She looked nervous, shifting her weight from foot to foot like she was about to deliver bad news. "Lily, I need to tell you something, and you're going to think I'm crazy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered, casting weird shadows across her face that made her look older than her 30-something years. I'd worked at Henderson Financial for 3 years, and Vanessa had always been friendly but distant, the kind of coworker who made small talk in the break room but never crossed into actual friendship territory. We'd exchange pleasantries about the weather or weekend plans, but I couldn't remember the last time we'd had a real conversation beyond work topics. Now she was standing in the parking garage at 7:30 on a Thursday evening, looking at me like she was about to confess to a crime. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep the panic out of my voice while mentally calculating how fast I could get into my car and lock the doors if this went sideways. She glanced around the garage like she expected someone to jump out from behind the concrete pillars, then stepped closer and lowered her voice even more. "I followed you home last Tuesday," she said, and my whole body went rigid. "I know how that sounds, but please let me explain before you freak out or call security or whatever you're thinking right now." My mind was racing through every possible explanation for why this woman would admit to stalking me, and none of them were good. I backed up against my car door, keeping my keys ready just in case, and told her she had exactly 1 minute to explain herself before I screamed for help. The parking garage suddenly felt way too empty and isolated, with just our 2 cars sitting there under the buzzing lights. "Your husband picked you up that day, remember? The silver Lexus?" she continued, speaking faster now like she was afraid I'd run before she finished. "I was leaving at the same time and ended up driving behind you guys for a while. At first I thought it was just coincidence, but then I noticed he took a really weird route to get to your neighborhood." I remembered that day vaguely because my car had been in the shop getting new brakes and David had offered to pick me up. He'd been in a good mood, talking about his day at the medical supply company where he worked as a regional sales manager. We'd stopped for Thai food on the way home and everything had seemed perfectly normal. "So what?" I said, still clutching my keys and trying to figure out if I should make a run for the elevator or just get in my car and lock the doors. Maybe he was avoiding traffic or needed to run an errand. "That doesn't explain why you followed us all the way to my house." Vanessa pulled out her phone and started scrolling through something, her hands shaking slightly. "He didn't go to your house though, that's the thing. He drove to this apartment complex about 2 miles from where you actually live. I watched him pull into the parking lot and you both went inside building C. You were in there for about 20 minutes before you came out alone and walked somewhere, and then he drove off in a different direction." The air in the parking garage suddenly felt too thin, like someone had sucked all the oxygen out through a vacuum. I tried to remember last Tuesday evening after dinner and realized I couldn't picture anything clearly beyond David dropping me off at home and saying he needed to run back to the office for a file he forgot. But Vanessa was describing something completely different, something that didn't match my memory at all. "You're wrong," I said, but my voice came out weak and uncertain. "We went straight home after picking up dinner. I was there all evening watching Netflix while he worked on some presentations in his office. You must have followed the wrong car or something." She held up her phone so I could see the screen, and there was a photo of David's silver Lexus with his license plate clearly visible, parked in front of a generic apartment building I'd never seen before. The timestamp showed last Tuesday at 6:15 in the evening, exactly when I thought we'd been heading home. My stomach dropped like I'd just gone over a cliff in a car with no brakes. "I took more pictures," Vanessa said quietly, swiping to the next image. "This one shows you getting out of the passenger side, and this one is about 15 minutes later when you came back out and started walking down the street. You looked really confused, like you didn't know where you were." I stared at the photos in complete disbelief because the woman in the pictures was definitely me, wearing the same navy dress I'd worn to work that day. But I had absolutely no memory of being at that apartment complex or walking around some random neighborhood looking lost. The last thing I clearly remembered was eating pad thai in our kitchen while David complained about a difficult client. "This doesn't make any sense," I whispered, feeling like the concrete floor was tilting under my feet. "Why would he take me to an apartment and then leave me there? And why can't I remember any of this?" Vanessa's face went from nervous to deeply concerned, and she put her phone away before speaking again. "Lily, I'm going to ask you something really personal, and I need you to be honest with yourself about the answer. The rest of the story is on my channel or linked below."